This is Bob and Joan Finnegan with us here at Northwest Koi Club.
I had always wanted to have saltwater fish, and we had a tank built for us, large tank for the living room. We started in with saltwater fish. We couldn't keep them alive, just the sea urchin.
Oh.
So we worked, the dealers came over and we could never figure out why the fish died. Beautiful colors and all, but it wasn't for us. So the fella that had saltwater fish also had some koi. And we thought, oh, instead of having a goldfish pond to walk over to get into our house, we'd have a koi pond. But we didn't know what koi were. So we went up to the second year of the koi show in Gardena. They had goldfish and they had koi. And it was raining cats and dogs. The Japanese judges were out there judging. And we stayed there 2 days, and the club kept saying, "What club do you belong to?" And we didn't even know what they were talking about. So that's how we got started. Then as we started going to koi shows right away. Asahi had a koi show every year, a dealer, breeder, and Gardena. And we got close to the Nakamura family, and they're into their third generation now. And Mitz Nakamura we'd go there Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings, and there'd be koi people, and we'd end up having a judging contest and education from Mitz Nakamura, who was just very knowledgeable. He wasn't just a dealer, he was koi at heart. And he came up to me one day and he said, "Have you ever thought of being a koi judge?" I didn't even think of it. And he said, "Well, you have a good eye, and I think you should try it." So we went into the CNA judging first. And AKCA wasn't around with their judging committee. And that's how we got started, and we've just gone into it, into the AKCA. My husband and I are both certified out of Japan and out of the United States, and we've traveled the world, and you meet people in the koi hobby you would never meet otherwise.
Yeah. True.
So
true.
Yeah. So I'll let my husband talk.
Well, where do you want me to start?
Your judging experience, how was that? What do you find rare or anything that treasures you?
Well, it's true. Joan was the one that started in the hobby. I was interested in fish, period. And so I didn't care what kind of fish, but we got into koi. And as she said, we got more familiar. Dr. Kuroki came over from Japan with the ZNA organization, and we didn't know him, we didn't know anything about him or anything, but soon there was a big movement. There was a separate club started from our own club. Our own club kind of dominated koi for a few years until the ZNA Los Angeles club came in. And then some of our members went there, and then there was some of us came over later, and some just naturally joined both clubs. Not knowing really what ZNA, all we knew was we thought the translation was friendship through scales. ZNA was a strange name to us. Anyway, they brought over their own people to judge koi shows, and so we're going. By that time, we had a koi show in San Diego. We had another show in Orange County. Nishiki Club started. We had a club in Pasadena. All these sprung off of the first koi club, SoCal, or the one we belonged to. And people for various reasons started their own clubs, and then LA club started, and there was a club up in Ventura, Oxnard area, and Then there was a group of people really in Koi. They were kind of distant to us up in the Fresno area. And Fresno had very good water and very good fish came down to compete. But that was in the beginning. I could enlarge it bigger, but that was the nucleus that we started with. And so Joan and I got into the Koi judging program. And as I was just telling someone here, in 1976, 17 of us from the LA club went to Japan for ZNA guests. And Dr. Kuroki was he was trying to propagate and enlarge the LA, and our clubs over here in America. So he was they were very polite to us and we traveled all around the main island. And Dr. Kuroki arranged for a Koi show to be put on just for us.
In Yonago.
In Yonago, Japan. And so a group of us, some of us, now I have to say this, in those days, Mrs. Finnegan, being a lady in Japan, didn't rank as high as a man. So Joan wasn't asked to be a judge, but Joan was right there. And so there was a group of the Japanese, and then there was two of us that were Caucasian, Dr. Virgil Heddix and myself. And so when we judged that show, we were the very first two Caucasians to ever judge in Japan, 1976. Well, then when the Japanese judges came to Japan, there's leaders now that have passed away. I can't think of their names, but they were right behind Dr. Kuroki. And they were very helpful, and we had little clinics. But then we had a period of learning over here. And there were some things about the Japanese culture that didn't quite blend in with our culture, and we were hemming and hawing back and forth. But Joan and I took off into the judging. And I was fascinated in handling fish. So you could pick, in those days we used to pick the fish up and turn them over and look them around. We wouldn't touch them today, but in those days we did. And I got very good at that quickly.
Feel the skin and how
Yeah, and Joan always was right there judging. So then we started going to different places. And we came up here 30 years ago. We went to Arizona. We went all over. And then eventually, someone in the United States decided that we should have an American Koi judging program. So AKCA came and asked myself and Bob Spindola. Pam, his wife, is still a judge. Bob's deceased. And Galen Hansen. And they put us together. And we formed a committee, and we'd all been. But Galen was just still learning, and Bob was well-versed in Koi and going to Japan. And so the three of us started the rules, and we took a lot of them from Japan, most of them. And it was the best thing that happened in Koi, because up to that time, dealers' words were the only thing the people had to go by. Where we set a standard that was there. You may not approve of it, but it was there. And that kind of took the baloney or the falseness out of salesmanship. So it pulled things together and people appreciated it. So then we set up our rules. And in the meantime, I was going to Japan. And about this time, back in the 80s, they decided that my wife was a nice lady, and they kind of accepted her. And they all like to have her picture. All these short Japanese guys, where they'd stand on a rock or something, and have their picture taken with Joan. And I told Joan, you probably got your picture in other guys' lockers or something by now. So, you know, she was nearly 6 foot in those days, and you know, that was an oddity to them to be friendly. And so, but I don't say sex appeal made Joan a koi judge, but it certainly helped. And we got socialized and we got in, and what we did was the right thing to do. We merely made friends with people in Japan, and we didn't lean on them. We didn't ask, can you get me a koi for nothing, or we didn't do any of that. Many Americans unfortunately use that attitude, and so it gave Joan and I a sound relationship with Japan. And so over the years we've had that, and in 1983 I was another gentleman, what's his name?
Don Allison.
Don Allison, he's deceased.
Both deceased.
Yeah, and myself were actual judges in the All Japan show.
The first three Americans.
First three Americans in first Caucasians, no British at all, in 1983. And I was fortunate to write the article on two fish for the book that year. That was a big step. Eventually, the Japanese learned that wherever Bob Finnegan went, his wife was right there. And so pretty soon and so in the United States we started judging, and of course the committee had to pick candidates that they felt they could rely on, and we set some very hard rules. And our motto was, you had to be above approach. And that means you didn't lie, you didn't cheat, and if you did, you came right out and confessed it. And it was a pretty hard standard, and some people thought it was impractical, but we held to it, and so eventually we built a nucleus of fine gentlemen and ladies that became koi judges. Now the Japanese were learning that women were very important in koi. Up until that time, it was a masculine hobby in Japan. And when we first went to the Japanese koi club in Los Angeles, the women all stayed in the kitchen and the men all met in the living room. Well, eventually they began to find out if you wanted any work done, you had to rely on the women.
Well, I didn't understand that, and I just kept sitting with the Japanese.
Yeah.
So anyway, time went on, and then I become a candidate, and they allowed Joan to become a candidate. There was one woman candidate over there at that time, wasn't there? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there was already that little break in it, and that allowed Joan to go along. And so now both of us are registered out of Japan and have been for many years. That still holds some water even today, and so for us to have a seminar in ZNA, we have to have certified judges from Japan to hold a seminar. So Joan and I, even in our old age, we thought about having a seminar here because our ranking here would make it eligible to hold a seminar. Well, those are just different aspects, but the koi history is so long and so big, and they're after us now to write a book on the beginning.
Yes.
And I think we're seriously going to have to sit down and put many incidences for 40 years. Some of them are very hysterical, some of them are very meaningful, and there have been so many things that's happened in mixing the two cultures together.
Yes.
And that's about, I'll give it to Joan.
At one point, and I believe it was the early 70s, 72 or so, there were a few of us that got together, and Eddie Fujimoto from up here, he used to be our neighbor down in Huntington Beach at home, and he and Bob and I were talking, and Eddie had this vision of having like an association, a group of clubs, so we could have speakers and trade speakers. We thought in California, Southern California. Then we said, well, why not all of California? Well, why not all of the West Coast? And so it went all the way up to Washington. But to begin with, there were 7 clubs in Southern California that got together, and we started forming AKCA. But before we got bylaws, took us a year to get the bylaws, and before we got really together, there was San Diego, Nashiki, Orange County ZNA, Pasadena Club, Philly Zuzu, and the LA ZNA, or Southern California chapter of ZNA, and Ventura Oxnard. There were 7 of us. And we got together, and it took like a year to get the bylaws even started, but it was the forming of AKCA.
Okay.
And then later, we got that going. Well, Arizona wanted to be included. Then Colorado and New Mexico was in there, and we just, instead of the Southern California, went all of California, then it went all West Coast, then it went over, like I say, Arizona, Colorado, and it just got bigger. And then before we knew it, it's all across the United States. And Eddie saw this before he passed away. Then we were into AKCA and working hard and getting that going, and we did a 501c. We really did the best we could organizing it, and it was more than, we got into seminars. Well, before that, he wanted a newsletter between the clubs. That's the formation of Koi USA. That started in our living room. And Eddie was, he had that foresight to get it going. And we used to carry, Eddie used to carry the magazines around in the back of his truck to dry the ink so it didn't cost as much to mail out. Eddie had ways to save money. And we were talking to him at the Nashville, Tennessee seminar last year, and he laughed. He sort of forgot that, but he says that did sound like him. Save money any way he could. And we were always interested in the magazine going in the black instead of the red. So each month we made sure it was in the black. And today it's, well, AKCA's 105 chapters. We have a few in Canada, and we have a few international. Australia, we formed that, helped on that. And there's, and Koi, I mean, you meet so many people that you would never meet otherwise. But that's how we got into it. We're still in it. And like Bob says, we're going to get some information to get a book together.
Yes.
Okay?
Okay. And as for our club, we are from Northwest Club.
Northwest, we're a member.
You guys are members, and it was when we had the club meetings and all. Your names do come up. It's a very inspiring for us, for young generations, to look up to you guys for all the things that you have done in the past, so that we can stand forward and say, that's us. That's because of you guys, and we want to thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, well.
You guys did such a precise job that I don't think we could have ever hoped for.
There's a lot of people out there.
There is a lot, but everybody keeps saying, but less done, I guess. But you guys did both.
You brought up a fact we should cover in this Northwest, and that, of course, is Pat and Larry Christensen. And they were in their 20s when they came down, and they were just plain Koi nuts. And they just hung around. And I have to tell you, Larry knows this, and so they putting up a show and taking them down. And in those days, the SoCal show was the fourth biggest show in the world. People didn't realize we had 57 tanks, and we'd have 700 fish. And in those days, you could mix the fish up with people's
Japanese
fish. You
style.
didn't keep them separated. That was before all these problems that could come in with that. And so it was a little bit different concept. And one of the things I must bring up about that show, people from all over the United States came.
Hawaii.
Poppy's from Potomac Club. That's where Frady's Club, the judge today. that's how a lot of our work got done, coming to the koi shows in Gardena, and then going home. And some of them started up without us knowing they were starting up. They just started up. Well, Larry and Pat, they had I says, well, if you're not going to run away, I'll put you to work and teach you how to put on a koi show. So they went into work, and I never forget, they stayed after the koi show went down, and so we had to clean tanks. And so we were looking for a volunteer, us guys, and Larry, he just fell in. And I said, Larry, you hold up the tank. He was young then.
Underneath the
hold
tank.
It up over your head and let it drape down. And
we'll
you turn slowly, and we'll squirt it with water. And he says, I might get wet. I says, you're from Portland, you're waterproof. You don't get wet when you're in Portland. And so Larry, he did that, and I've never forgotten it. And that really was the gelling point, that we knew we had a contact and a deal here. That was good.
And some people have that thing in their blood, that anything for what they love, they'll do anything for it.
What you put into it, you get out of it.
You get out of it. It's so true. So true.
Then there was another incident that helped, and Benji Laguna Koi, he's here today.
Yes.
Well, Benji was just starting out, and years later, and he didn't know how to buy koi, and down comes Larry and Pat, and they know all about koi, and they didn't have many koi dealers up here, so they're going to all the places. And this was an Orange County ZNA show. The Orange County Club dissolved a few years ago, but there's a lot of members still around.
Yeah. If we are going to name, we have a full list of people that we should be naming, but the things that they do for the club. So it's really, really a much dedicated hobby that koi is.
And every show, people go to help, and they see things, and they take those ideas back to their
clubs.
And it's all education that's being shared. Whether it's koi or koi shows or auctions, it's just it's amazing to sit back and see what all's going on.
You guys must be feeling, this is all our work that is seeing. How do you feel now? 40 years later, that all your hard work is paying off.
Well, it's an experience that has come on our own age.
Overwhelming,
And a lot of things we're overwhelmed. We're very overwhelmed. Sometimes you work hard and you just don't think you're being appreciated, and then there's other times you don't worry about being appreciated because it's just natural to work at it. And I really bring up a point on that. The best workers are those that just work it for the love of koi.
For the love of koi.
You got to have somebody that's got a little bit of ego, but not much. You get too much ego, you're taken away from koi.
Yeah.
You got just enough ego to have a drive, then you're contributing to koi. And that's what keeps the koi organization going, is when people, over this weekend, we've heard stories from people, how they go home and how they work hard, and other people, it's hard. But this club here has always been an unusual club. First of all, you've always been filled with artistic people.
Yes.
I never saw so much talent in the art as in the Northwest Club. And you've always had the friendship part. And we noticed that it's strange for a big metropolitan area to have that friendship. The smaller clubs out in the boondocks, places like Idaho and different,
a lot of them have some.
They're there, but that's where you start. But you have to be like a church. If you don't have a purpose, then you kind of meander. And so a club, no matter what it is, they have to strive to do something. And so not all clubs can put on koi show, but they should strive to. But it's not going to happen. But they can put on pond tours. They can do different things. They can work to put a pond into a center in their town or something, or in a school. We've done it. It's all happened from hospitals to schools. We put koi ponds in all over. Those are the works that that keep the organization going. And it's and you'd be surprised how much talent we have in the koi world.
Yes.
If we want to know what's going on in the stock market, we got people in the koi world.
Internet,
You want to know
internet.
what's going on in Washington, D.C. in the Hall of Justice, we got koi people. We got koi people all over in different places. If you need a psychiatrist, we got koi people. So,
Everybody is working their professional
Right.
life as well as keeping their koi
Healthy.
Yeah, healthy.
and while I'm saying that, AKCA needs a business manager. We need a good
Yeah,
one.
we need a business
And,
to
but-
help Doug Dahl.
to help Doug Dahl, who just sticks with us year in and year out, even though he's dropped out of koi, being our CEO. If you don't have those
CFO.
if you don't have those strong points, then you don't have an organization. I might say one other thing before we close. We're talking about koi clubs, but we're also speaking about AKCA, the association. That's what it is. It's not a club. It's a corporation. It's a corporation formed to help clubs, just like the corporation that helps the Girl Scouts and the corporation that helps the Boy Scouts. And sometimes they have to put rules and laws down that don't really cotton too well. But that's the way our laws are, and that's the way our rules are. And without the corporation, you wouldn't have the sponsored judging program or the sponsored KHA program or other programs in the future. And the koi organization does have a future. There's areas that we haven't gone into yet. One of the things we're very helpful with, and we know that because we lost it and we just got it back, is insurance. Now we finally got back on insurance, and oh boy, you see the members perk up now. But we'd like to think that they like us more than just for our insurance.
Thank you so much for taking this
thank
time to give us this interview. And I know you guys came from Costa Mesa, and it was really nice to see you guys here
Down in
for
Southern
our show.
California.
Yes.
And we do appreciate the trophy they gave us. That was overwhelming.
We've appreciated the association, and when we found our club dissolved down south,
south.
we didn't hesitate to join your club. That was our
CNA.
one choice.
We do honor you guys for all the hard work you did. We appreciate you guys still going on and helping wherever needs to be helped, and judging, and I don't know where else can you help in this koi hobby. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay.
Thank you, Jabal.